Don't get rid of your old albums, get a new turntable. Let's check this one out. Dave Taylor here, and I'm checking out this. This is the Rekkord F100 P automatic turntable with built-in preamp, and it's really a great experience. It lets you either pull out those old vinyl LPs that you have and just drop them on, or if you're new to this whole experience, it does everything for you. There's no calibration you need to do. You don't need to go buy a separate needle, nothing. It's super easy. In fact, let me go ahead and just start this, and we're going to be listening to this album just for a second or two. This is Ramsey Lewis. It's one of his great old albums. Now notice it's spun up to the correct speed. It moved the tone arm, and now it's going to gently drop the needle onto the album. And then for the speakers here, I have Mitchell Acoustic Ustream ones that also have a built-in amp. So I can make this really loud, but just overall, it's just a really nice listening experience. Now, obviously, I can't just play this song as much as I'd like to because I don't have the rights to it. So I'm going to choose stop, and it will lift up the needle, put it back into the holder, and then stop turning the album. All of that's automatic. I can easily just go ahead and close this and let it do its thing, and there we go. So all of that's super easy to use. Now, let me show you a close-up of all the controls just on the side of the tone arm. You can see there are two different speeds. There are separate controls for lifting the needle up, and that's really helpful if you want to pause. This is sort of the old school pause button. And then start and stop automate the majority of what you're going to want to do. And when the needle gets to the very inside of the album, it will lift up, it will go all the way back to the rest area, and then the album will stop turning. Now, one thing that's interesting is with 45s, they were smaller albums and they had bigger holes in the middle. So a 33 has a little hole that's maybe about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit smaller than that. But this was the size of a 45, so you'd have to put this in the middle as a sort of spacer. This album player is smart enough that if you choose 45, when it lifts the needle up and moves it in, it will move it to the correct spot, not just drop it onto the outer edge as it would with the 33. And actually, I think it's 33 1/3 RPMs, but be that as it may, the album player, the record player, the turntable, whatever you want to call it, does everything so you don't have to even know this stuff. So it's super easy to work with. So it's powered by a DC motor, and it's what's known as a belt drive turntable with 20 to 20,000 hertz frequency response, 40 decibels of rumble, which you can adjust further by putting it on a more sort of sound buffering bass. And that's just sort of the rumble of the system itself. It's the nature of analog audio. And it has a signal to noise ratio of 62 decibels. And here's a stat that you only need to worry about with record players. It has 0.06% wow and flutter. And that's a measure of, is it a consistent speed, or does it slow down and speed up and slow down and speed up? You really want it to be as absolutely consistent in speed as possible to get the best possible music reproduction. Now, it comes built in with a needle. This is the Audio-Technica AT3600L. Very nice needle setup. And here's a close-up. You can see it's a fairly complicated little gizmo, but that little tiny needle is what rests in the grooves of the vinyl, and that's really all that's responsible for that music reproduction. So the better the needle and the better all of the circuitry, the better the experience. It's really pretty fun. Now, the tone arm itself is 8.3 inches. It's an ultra low mass tone arm with viscosity dampening. So if you noticed when it raised and lowered, it doesn't bounce, it doesn't jitter, it's a very smooth motion. That's that viscosity dampening, and all of that is important to get the best possible experience. The unit's also pre-adjusted for tracking and anti-skating. So anti-skating, for example, is if I bumped the table, I don't want the needle to bounce all the way across the record. That would not be good, both for the record and particularly for the listening experience. They have stuff to make sure that doesn't occur. Now, dimensions-wise, if I open this up, you can see a little bit more of the size. It is 16.9 inches wide, 14.3 inches deep, and 5.5, if I close this now, about 5.5 inches tall. It's 12 pounds. It is a big, heavy unit, but turntables need to be. They need to be really solid and really firm so that as they play music, you're not getting any vibrations in the unit itself. It's really nice. They've really engineered this well. Not much else to talk about. I will tell you that it sounds great. It's super easy to work with. My teenager watched me setting all this up and listening to some of this music and immediately said, ooh, I want that. That looks so cool. And it is such a different aesthetic experience than bringing out your phone and saying, play. You know, I mean, yeah, you can do that and you get billions of music and songs and choices, but there's something about vinyl. There's something about this whole kinesthetic experience that is really not just nostalgic for those of us old enough to remember buying albums, but just is a different relationship with your music. And the good news is that there's a lot of LPs out there, and some of them you can get at remarkable prices. Yeah, you'll have to clean things, and yes, it's analog, so it does gradually wear down. When you can play the same song on Spotify 50,000 times, and it's never going to sound any different. With this, it will gradually start to decay, but what a great experience to have is actually have a physical relationship with your music reproduction system. So really the only thing left to talk about at this point is the price. So let's talk about that. But before we get there, I'm going to ask if you could subscribe to my channel, please. A click or a tap on that subscribe button, then go ahead and click that notification bell to make sure you know about my new content, and we're connected. Great. If you found this interesting, informative, useful, go ahead and give me a like. Always appreciate those, really do. So, cool. Let's see if I can tilt it forward just a little bit here. This is the Rekkord F100 P automatic turntable with built-in preamp, and it is $399. If you don't need the built-in preamp, then you can save $30. The one without the preamp is $369. In both instances, you can learn a lot more about it at rekkordaudio.com. I think I'm going to go back to Ramsey Lewis. Let's go ahead and get him rolling here. And that means that, come on, Mr. Lewis, you can do it. That means that as soon as this happens, I'm going to have to catch you in my next video.